I lost a simple bet. The consequences changed my body forever. I used to believe that the worst thing a simple bet could cost you was pride. Maybe a few laughs at your expense. Maybe buying drinks for everyone else. That's what I thought the night I agreed to it. Leaning back in my chair, confident, careless, smiling like a man who thought he knew exactly who he was. I had no idea that one careless sentence would rewrite my reflection forever. My name is Arav, and until a few weeks ago my life was painfully ordinary. I worked as a junior analyst at a mid-sized tech firm. Nothing glamorous but stable. Predictable. Safe. My days were spreadsheets and meetings, deadlines and coffee breaks. I dressed like every other guy in the office. Button-down shirts, neutral colors, shoes polished just enough to look responsible. I was invisible in the way that felt comforting. Invisible people don't get questioned. At least that's what I believed. At home things were different. Not dramatic. Not chaotic. Just quietly complicated. I lived with my girlfriend, Isabella, in a modest apartment on the edge of the city, high enough to feel removed from the noise, low enough to still hear life happening outside our windows. We'd been together for nearly 2 years. Long enough to fall into routines. Long enough to assume we knew each other completely. He thought I did. Isabella was confident in a way that filled rooms. Not loud, just certain. She had a presence that made people listen, made decisions feel final. She worked in brand strategy, which meant she understood perception better than anyone I knew. How appearances shaped truth. How stories could be controlled if you framed them right. Maybe that's why I never told her my secret. Because once you understand how powerful perception is, you become terrified of losing control of it. The truth is, I had always been drawn to things I couldn't explain. Textures. Shapes. The quiet intimacy of fabric against skin. It wasn't something I talked about. It wasn't even something I fully admitted to myself for a long time. I told myself it was curiosity. A phase. Something harmless that lived entirely in my head. I wasn't a crossdresser by choice. At least that's what I told myself. I wasn't brave enough for that word. I never owned anything feminine. Never tried anything on. Never crossed that invisible line. But sometimes when Isabella left for work early and I had the apartment to myself, I'd pause while folding laundry. I'd notice how light her blouses were. How soft her dresses felt compared to my stiff shirts. I'd hold them for a second too long. Then I'd fold them neatly and walk away. That was the rule. Look, don't touch. Feel but don't act. Because acting meant consequences. And consequences meant losing everything I'd built my life around. The night of the bet started like any other Friday. A small group of friends. Takeout containers on the table. Music low. Laughter easy. We were talking about something stupid. Office gossip, I think. Someone challenged my opinion. I doubled down. Someone else laughed and said, "You sure about that?" And that's when the words slipped out of my mouth. Bet. It was supposed to be nothing. A joke wrapped in confidence. A harmless dare between friends who thought they knew each other. The rules were vague at first. Too vague. That should have been my warning. Bets with unclear boundaries are never about winning. They're about watching someone lose. I won't say yet what the bet was. Not fully. Because even now saying it out loud makes my stomach tighten. What matters is this. The bet wasn't just about money or embarrassment. It was about control. And I lost. At first, the consequences felt playful. Teasing. Something I could brush off with a laugh. But then the rules changed. Or maybe they were always there, just waiting for me to realize I'd agreed to them. That's when my body stopped feeling like it belonged only to me. It started subtly. Small changes I told myself were stress. Fatigue. My imagination spiraling because I was overthinking everything. But mirrors don't lie, not forever. And neither does fear. The hardest part wasn't what was happening to me. It was knowing that Isabella was right there. Sleeping beside me. Brushing her teeth next to me. Looking at me every day with the same trusting eyes. Completely unaware that something fundamental was shifting beneath my skin. That the man she thought she knew was slowly slipping out of alignment with his own reflection. Every morning became a test. Every glance from her felt loaded. Every question, "Are you okay?" felt like a trap. Because how do you explain something you don't understand yourself? How do you admit that a simple bet has started rewriting your body? And maybe awakening parts of you that were never supposed to wake up at all? I told myself it would stop. That there would be a point where I could laugh about it. That this wasn't permanent. I was wrong. And the scariest part? Somewhere between the fear and the secrecy, between the guilt and the thrill, I wasn't sure I wanted it to stop anymore. The first change happened on a Monday morning. I remember it because Mondays were predictable. Alarm at 7 o'clock. Shower. Coffee. Mirror. Same face. Same body. Same man staring back at me with tired eyes and a rehearsed sense of normalcy. Except that morning something was off. It wasn't dramatic. Nothing I could point to immediately. Just a strange tightness in my chest when I pulled on my shirt. The fabric sat differently, like it was fighting against me. I tugged it down, annoyed, blaming the dryer. Then I caught my reflection sideways. My shoulders looked narrower. Not weak. Not thin. Just softer. The sharp angles I'd known my whole adult life seemed blurred, like someone had lightly smudged a pencil sketch. I leaned closer to the mirror, heart thudding, and flexed my arms. Still mine. Still masculine. I laughed under my breath. Relax, I muttered. You're imagining things. That became my favorite lie. The bet replayed in my head constantly after that. The laughter. The smug looks. The way they'd all stared at me like they knew something I didn't. Like I'd stepped into a game that had rules I couldn't see yet. The punishment, if you could call it that, was supposed to be symbolic. Psychological. Just for fun. That's what they said. But symbols don't make your pulse race every time you undress. Symbols don't make mirrors feel like enemies. By Wednesday I started avoiding my reflection entirely. Isabella noticed before I did. You've been quiet, she said one evening, leaning against the kitchen counter while I pretended to be very interested in my phone. Work stress. Yeah, I answered too quickly. She studied me for a moment, head tilted slightly. Isabella always did that when she sensed cracks forming. She didn't push, she observed. Filed things away. Hey, she called. My voice came out hoarse. Hey. She looked at me for a long second. Too long. You okay? She asked. I nodded. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. And as she walked past me I felt it. Her gaze flicked, not to my face but to my body. Like she'd seen something shift. Like she'd felt it too. That night I barely slept. Every time Isabella shifted beside me I flinched, convinced she could feel it. The difference. My body didn't rest the way it used to. It felt arranged differently, like gravity itself had adjusted its grip on me. In the dark, I replayed her glance again and again. Not accusing. Not shocked. Just curious. That was worse. Curiosity meant questions. Questions meant answers. And I had none that wouldn't ruin everything. The next morning I stood in the shower longer than usual, letting hot water pound against my skin like it might reset me. My eyes drifted downward despite my efforts to avoid looking. I froze. My chest had changed. Not dramatically but undeniably. There was a softness there that hadn't existed before, a subtle swell beneath the skin that reacted to the heat, to my touch. I pressed my palm against it, pulse racing, disbelief turning slowly into terror. This isn't possible, I whispered. But my body didn't argue. At work nothing felt safe anymore. My chair felt different. My clothes sat wrong. Every movement reminded me that something was shifting beneath the surface, quietly and relentlessly. And then there were the looks. Not stares, just second glances. A coworker pausing mid-sentence. Someone asking if I'd lost weight. Another joking that I should drop the skincare routine, because my face looked smoother than theirs. I laughed along, but inside I was unraveling. By lunchtime I locked myself in a bathroom stall and stared at my reflection in my phone camera. My jawline had softened. My lips looked fuller. My eyes, God, my eyes, looked bigger somehow, framed by lashes I swore hadn't been that dark before. I looked like a version of myself I'd never met, and didn't know how to stop becoming. The messages started that evening. From the group chat. From the people who'd watched me lose the bet. How's the adjustment? You noticing anything yet? Don't panic. This is the fun part. My hands shook as I typed back nothing. Fun. That word echoed in my head all night. Isabella noticed more after that. The way I avoided changing in front of her. The way I flinched when she touched my chest. The way I insisted on keeping the lights dim. One evening she reached for me while we were getting ready for bed, fingers sliding under my shirt like they always had. I caught her wrist. Too fast. Too sharp. He pulled back, startled. What's wrong? Nothing, I said, forcing a smile that felt brittle. Just tired. She didn't argue, but she didn't forget either. The next day she came home early. I was standing in the bedroom when I heard the door unlock. Not dressed, half-dressed. My shirt on, but my jeans unbuttoned because they didn't fit right anymore. My hips refused to cooperate with fabric that had once been mine. Panic surged. I scrambled to the bathroom just as Isabella walked in. She stopped short. Her eyes swept over me, hair slightly longer than it should have been, shirt clinging where it hadn't before, posture subtly different. She frowned. Have you been doing something different? My mouth went dry. What do you mean? She gestured vaguely. I don't know. You just look. She stopped herself. I held my breath. Different, she finished softly. That word again. Different. I laughed too loudly. Guess stress is finally getting to me. She didn't smile back. That night, after she fell asleep, I stood in front of the mirror again. This time I didn't turn away. I took off my clothes slowly, like I was afraid sudden movements might break the illusion. What stared back at me was no longer ambiguous. My waist curved inward. My hips flared outward. My chest was unmistakably fuller. My body had crossed a line. I raised my hands and touched myself, tentative, reverent, terrified. The sensation nearly dropped me to my knees. My skin was more sensitive everywhere. Every brush of my fingers sent sparks through me, lighting up nerves that felt newly wired. I pressed my palms to the mirror, staring into my own eyes. Who are you? I asked my reflection. It didn't answer. But it didn't look confused either. On impulse, an impulse I'd been fighting for days, I opened the closet again. This time I didn't hesitate. I chose a skirt. It slid over my hips like it had been waiting for me. I paired it with a blouse. Nothing flashy, just soft, flowing. I didn't add makeup. I didn't need to. When I looked in the mirror, my breath left me in a quiet, broken sound. I looked believable. Not a joke. Not a costume. A woman in progress. That's when I heard it. The click of a phone camera. I spun around. The bedroom door was open. Isabella stood there. Phone in hand. Eyes wide, not with anger, not with disgust, but with something far more dangerous. Recognition. I knew it, she whispered. The silence between us felt louder than shouting ever could. Isabella didn't move. Neither did I. Her phone stayed raised, screen glowing faintly in the dim bedroom light. I could see myself reflected there, skirt clinging to my hips, blouse soft against a chest that no longer knew how to pretend it was flat. Hair falling into my eyes in a way that made my face look unfamiliar and devastatingly exposed. I can explain, I said. It was the weakest sentence I'd ever spoken. Isabella lowered the phone slowly, like she was afraid sudden movement might make me disappear. How long? She asked. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Tried again. I don't know. Weeks. Maybe longer. That's not what I meant. Her voice didn't shake, but her hands did. How long have you been changing? The word hit harder than why ever could. I looked down at myself. At the skirt. At my body. At the proof I could no longer deny. It started after a bet, I said quietly. She blinked. A bet. I nodded. My throat burned. It was supposed to be nothing. A joke. I lost. And then, things started happening. I didn't choose this. That part was true. I just hadn't stopped it either. Isabella stepped closer. Each step felt like pressure on my lungs. You're telling me, she said slowly, that you're turning into this because of a bet? Her eyes flicked over me again. Not judgmental. Analytical. Like she was trying to understand the rules of a game she'd just discovered. Yes, I whispered. She reached out before I could stop her. Her fingers brushed my arm. I flinched. Not because it hurt, but because it felt too much. Her touch sent a wave through me that made my knees weaken. Isabella noticed. Of course she did. Her expression changed. Your skin, she said softly. It's different. I pulled away. Please don't. Why? She asked, and now there was something sharp beneath her calm. Because it feels good? The question sliced straight through me. I couldn't answer. She exhaled slowly, backing up until she sat on the edge of the bed. You lied to me, she said, not accusing, just stating a fact. Every day. You let me think I was imagining things. I was scared, I said. I didn't know how to tell you. That doesn't make it better. I know. Another silence stretched between us. Thick, heavy, electric. Then Isabella did something I didn't expect. She smiled. Not kindly. Not cruelly. Knowingly. So, she said, crossing her legs, who else knows? My stomach dropped. What? The bet, she clarified. Who else is watching this happen? I hesitated. Her eyes sharpened. Ariv. The group chat, I admitted. They check in sometimes. Her smile widened just a fraction. Of course they do. She stood again, circling me slowly. I felt like prey. Or maybe a specimen. You know what this means, right? She said. I swallowed. That you hate me. She stopped in front of me. Lifted my chin gently so I had no choice but to meet her eyes. No, she said. It means you're not the only one who's been losing control. My pulse thundered. What do you mean? Isabella glanced at the open closet. At the clothes I'd touched. Worn. Needed. You think this bet is just about humiliation? She asked. Or embarrassment? She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone again, this time turning the screen toward me. Messages filled the display. Not from my friends. From her. Conversations I'd never seen. Names I didn't recognize. Screenshots. Rules. Timelines. My blood ran cold. You're not the only one who knew about the bet, Isabella said quietly. I just didn't expect you to lose so completely. The room tilted. You knew. I whispered. She met my gaze without flinching. I helped design it. Something inside me shattered. Why? My voice broke. Why would you do this to me? She stepped closer again, close enough that I could feel her breath. Because you were already halfway there, she said. You just needed a push. Her eyes dropped, to my body. To the skirt. To the truth I'd been hiding even from myself. And now, she continued softly, you have a choice. My hands trembled. What choice? She reached behind me and picked something up from the dresser. A small velvet box. She opened it. Inside was a delicate necklace. Feminine. Intentional. Either you end this right now, Isabella said, and deal with the consequences they really planned for you. She stepped forward and lifted the necklace, holding it just inches from my throat. Or you accept what you're becoming. The mirror behind her caught my reflection. Half man. Half woman. Terrified. Alive. And for the first time I realized the bet hadn't changed my body first. It had changed who held power over it. The necklace trembled slightly in Isabella's fingers. I wasn't sure if it was because her hand was shaking, or because mine were. The velvet box lay open between us like evidence, quiet, undeniable. The chain inside caught the light, delicate and unmistakably feminine. Not costume jewelry. Not a joke. A commitment. I swallowed. You planned this, I said, my voice barely holding together. You watched me change and said nothing. I watched you fight yourself, Isabella corrected calmly. There's a difference. I laughed weakly. You call this helping? She tilted her head. I call it honesty, forced honesty. My chest tightened. Not just emotionally. Physically. Pressure bloomed beneath my skin, slow and deliberate, like my body was listening to every word and responding on its own schedule. I gasped, clutching at the blouse as sensation rippled through me, heat, fullness, awareness. Isabella noticed. Her eyes darkened. It's happening faster now, she murmured. Isn't it? I shook my head in panic. Make it stop. She didn't move. I can't. That's a lie. No, she said gently. It's the truth you keep running from. I backed away until my shoulders hit the mirror. Cold glass pressed against my spine. My reflection stared back at me, eyes wide, lips parted, body caught mid-shift like a paused transformation sequence. The skirt hugged curves that had no intention of disappearing. My waist had narrowed even more. My chest strained against the fabric, undeniably fuller now. I looked feminine. Not pretending. Not experimenting. Becoming. This isn't me, I whispered. Isabella stepped behind me. Her hands rested on my shoulders. Light, grounding. I felt her there before I saw her in the mirror, standing behind me like a shadow that had always belonged. Look again, she said. I didn't want to, but I did. The person staring back wasn't terrified anymore. They were conflicted, vulnerable, beautiful in a way that scared me more than fear ever could. You don't hate this, Isabella continued softly. You hate that you didn't choose it first. My breath hitched. Because she was right. Somewhere beneath the panic, beneath the shame, there was a current of something else. Something electric and undeniable. Relief. Alignment. A sense that my body was finally speaking a language I'd silenced for years. I never wanted this to be permanent, I said. Isabella lifted the necklace again. The bet was never about temporary change. It was about commitment under pressure. What happens if I say no? I asked. Her reflection met mine. Serious now. They take control, she said. Publicly. Completely. No protection. No framing. No say in how your story gets told. My stomach dropped. And if I say yes? She raised the chain slightly higher. Then you stop being their experiment, and start being mine. The words settled over me like a weight, and a promise. My body reacted before my mind could catch up. A sudden rush surged through me, heat spreading outward, hips shifting with a dull ache that stole my breath. I cried out softly, gripping the edge of the dresser as balance left me. Isabella caught me. Her arms wrapped around my waist, around her waist really, and held me upright as the sensation peaked. I felt it. Bones adjusting. Muscles redistributing. Skin tightening, smoothing. My voice broke, not just emotionally but physically. Higher. Softer. I stared into the mirror in horror and awe as the last traces of denial drained from my reflection. I was no longer between. I was across the line. Tears slid down my cheeks. I'm scared. Isabella pressed her forehead to mine. I know. I looked at the necklace again. At the choice. At the future I'd been running from while my body sprinted toward it. Slowly, deliberately, I nodded. Hey, I said. The word felt small. But it shattered everything. Isabella lifted the chain and fastened it around my neck. The cool metal settled against my collarbone like a seal locking into place. The moment it clicked shut, my knees buckled. The final shift slammed through me like a wave, stealing my breath, rewriting my center of gravity. Isabella held me as I collapsed against her, sobbing, not in pain but in overwhelming sensation. When it passed, I lifted my head. The mirror showed someone new. Not disguised. Not altered. Rewritten. A woman stared back at me, my eyes, my memories, my fear, wearing a body that no longer belonged to the man who'd lost a bet. Isabella smiled faintly. It's done. I touched the necklace with trembling fingers. What am I now? I whispered. She leaned close to my ear. Mine, she said. And in that moment, I understood the bet hadn't changed my body forever. It had decided who I would become. The apartment felt smaller after that. Not physically, but like the walls had leaned in, listening, waiting for the next mistake. Isabella helped me to the bed and sat beside me, her hand resting on my knee like it belonged there. Like I belonged there. I stared down at myself, still struggling to reconcile what I felt with what I saw. The skirt wasn't borrowed anymore. The body wasn't temporary anymore. The fear wasn't theoretical anymore. Somewhere outside, a car horn blared. Life continued. People laughed. Strangers lived entire normal days, completely unaware that mine had just split into a before and after. Tomorrow, Isabella said calmly, we'll talk about logistics. My heart skipped. Logistics. Clothes. Presentation. What we tell people. What we don't. She met my eyes. You can't hide anymore. Not from them. Not from yourself. I nodded slowly, though my chest felt tight. And the others? I asked. The ones from the bet? Her lips curved slightly. They'll be disappointed. Because I didn't lose? Because you didn't break. That should have comforted me. It didn't. That night, I lay awake while Isabella slept beside me, her breathing steady, untroubled. I traced the necklace absently, feeling its weight, light but inescapable. Every time I shifted, my body reminded me of itself. The way my hips pressed into the mattress. The way my chest moved when I breathed. I closed my eyes. Images flooded my mind. My co-workers' faces when they noticed. My family. The questions. The looks. The whispers that always followed people like me. People like me. The thought alone made my pulse race. At some point, sometime before morning, I drifted into an uneasy half-sleep. The sound of my phone vibrating dragged me back. I froze. Slowly, carefully, I reached for it on the nightstand. A notification. From the group chat. A no number added you. A message followed immediately. Did you think choosing her meant you were safe? My blood turned cold. Another message. We're still watching. I sat up too fast, the sheet slipping from my shoulders. Isabella stirred but didn't wake. The phone buzzed again. An image this time. I stared at it, heart pounding. It was a photo of me. From behind. Standing in the apartment window earlier that night. Curves visible, necklace glinting faintly at my throat. Taken from outside. They'd already adapted. My hands shook as I locked the phone and pulled the sheet tighter around myself. The room felt exposed now. Like privacy was a luxury I just lost forever. I looked over at Isabella. Should I wake her? Should I tell her they weren't done? Or would that just prove she'd been right all along? That once you step into something like this, there is no clean exit? Morning light crept through the curtains. A new day. A new body. A future I hadn't agreed to, but now had to survive. Isabella rolled over, eyes opening slowly. She smiled when she saw me. Good morning, she said. You're beautiful when you're scared. I didn't smile back. Because in that moment I didn't know which terrified me more. The people who had started the bet. Or the woman beside me who seemed to know exactly how it would end. I looked down at my hands, slender, unfamiliar, and then back at her. What happens if I try to leave? I asked quietly. Isabella's smile faded. That, she said after a pause, is a very dangerous question. The phone buzzed again. And I realized the bet hadn't really ended. It had only moved into its final phase. If you were in my place, would you trust Isabella? Would you run? Or would you embrace the life that chose you? Do you think I can escape this? Or am I already exactly where I'm meant to be?